Hello, everyone. This is one of a series of short interviews that I've been conducting at the Bay Area Alignment Workshop, which is run by FAR.AI. Links to what we're discussing, as usual, are in the description. A transcript is, as usual, available at axrp.net. And as usual, if you want to support the podcast, you can do so at patreon.com/axrpodcast. Well, let's continue to the interview. All right. And today I'm going to be chatting with Joel Lehman.
Hello. Nice to be here.
Yeah. So first of all, for people who aren't familiar with you, who are you and what do you do?
Yeah. So I'm a machine learning researcher. I've been in the field for 10, 12 years. Co-author of a book called Why Greatness Cannot Be Planned, which is about open-endedness. And I've been a researcher at Uber.AI and most recently OpenAI, and currently an independent researcher.
Gotcha. So before we talk about what you do, or your current research, so we're currently at this alignment workshop being run by FAR.AI. How are you finding the workshop?
It's great. Yeah. Lots of nice people, lots of interesting ideas, and good to see old friends.
So what are you currently thinking about working on?
Yeah, I'm really interested in ways, like positive visions for how AI could go well, and set against kind of a default assumption that AI is currently deployed might kind of exacerbate existing societal problems. So kind of the rough intuition is capitalism is great, but also the kind of the downsides of capitalism is kind of we get what we want, but not what we need. And maybe AI will get really good at giving us what we want, but at the expense of kind of epistemic sense making and meaningful interactions with people and maybe political destabilization, that kind of thing.
Like, it seems to me that understanding the world, having meaningful interactions with people, those are also things people want, right? So can you give me a feel for, and political destabilization is, I guess, a little bit more tricky, but yeah, do you have a sense for why AI might erode those things by default?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. Yeah, we do kind of have a sense of what we want kind of in a grander scale, like what a meaningful life might look to us. And at the same time, it seems like if you look at the past maybe decade or two, in general, it kind of feels almost like death by 1,000 paper cuts, where we get convenience at the expense of something else. Like, and one way of thinking about it is kind of some part of society is kind of reward hacking the other half of society. So, like Facebook had a really beautiful motivation, or social media in general is a very beautiful motivation.
Yeah.
But in practice, it seems like it maybe has made us less happy and less connected, and we find ourselves addicted to it and to our cell phone and kind of all the attention economy sorts of things where. Again, we might be in touch with what we, like what our better angel would do, and yet kind of like it's really hard to have the discipline and willpower to kind of resist the optimization power against us.
Okay, and so is the vision something like we get AI? AI is just like a lot better. It's really good at optimizing for stuff, but it's optimizing, but like we sort of have this like instant gratification thing that the AI optimizes really hard for at the expense of like higher level things. Is that roughly right?
Yeah, I think you can look at kind of the different kind of AI products that are coming out, and some of them might be kind of beneficial to kind of our well-being and to our greater aspirations, but some non-trivial chunk will be kind of seemingly like, I mean, it's hard to know how it'll play out, but take like Replica, for example, like a really interesting technology, but there's like a lot of fears that if you optimize for market demand, which might be like kind of like companions that say all the things that make you feel good, but don't actually help you kind of connect with the outside world or be social or something.
Right. So yeah, up against that, I guess, yeah, you said that you're thinking about positive visions of AI. Like what kinds of positive visions?
Yeah, so I wrote an essay with Amanda No, kind of like pitching that part of what we need is just the sense of the world we'd like to live in, and what the kind of alternatives to some of the technologies that are coming out are. So, if social media has had kind of some knock-on effects that are a little bit bad for our well-being and for our societal kind of infrastructure, what would a positive version of that be? And so it's kind of putting aside the market dynamics, which make it maybe difficult to actually realize that in practice, but at least having a sense of what something we might want would be, and what are the technical problems that you might need to solve to try to even enable that.
And before we go into that, what's the name of that essay so people can Google it?
That is a great question. I think it's called "We Need a we need positive visions of AI grounded in well-being.
Okay, hopefully that's enough for people to find it, and there'll be a link in the description.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So how? Yeah. So can you give us a? I don't know. Do you have some of the positive vision yet, or is the essay mostly like it would be nice if we had it?
Partly it's like it'd be nice if we had it, and partly there's at least some chunks of it that we can begin to map out what it might look like and what are some of the technical challenges to realizing it. At a research paper out maybe a year ago called Machine Love, and it was about like trying to take principles from positive psychology and psychotherapy and imagining what it'd be like to kind of bash those up against the formalisms of machine learning, and is there a kind of a productive intersection? And it tries to get into the ideas of going beyond just kind of revealed preferences or kind of Boltzmann rationality or whatever kind of convenient measure of kind of human preferences we have to something that's more in touch with what we kind of know from the humanities about what human flourishing broadly looks like.
So we want to get like a better read on, I don't know, human flourishing, on things other than like very simple Boltzmann rationality. I'm wondering if you have takes about how or if someone's just a machine learning person, like how do they start going about that, do you think?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. I think that there are, ways that we could just stretch the current formalisms that would kind of be useful. There's really interesting work by Micah, I'm forgetting his last name.
Micah Carroll?
Carroll, yeah, at UC Berkeley.
Yep.
Yeah, on just the difficulties of preferences that change.
Right.
And so that's kind of going a little bit beyond kind of the idea of, your preferences are fixed and immutable. So like stretching things outwards from there and dealing more with the messiness of human psychology, that, we're not simple utility maximizers, and that, we can actually make decisions against our best interests. And how do you start to grapple with that? And another thing would be just to be in touch with, the broader literature from the humanities about that, and trying to find if there are like interesting inroads from the philosophy of flourishing to the kinds of formalisms we use. I think like work like cooperative reinforcement learning feels like kind of like, it's again stretching the formalism to kind of encompass more of the messiness in there. And I feel like things in that direction, I think I'd be really excited about.
Okay. So just, kind of engaging more with like, difficulties of like what's going on with humans, like funky stuff, just like trying to grapple with it and just move a little bit less from this sort of very theoretical place. Like real reinforcement learning for human feedback is really cool, and it's really based on kind of pairwise comparisons, and
right. So how could we go beyond that? I don't have like great ideas there. It seems like really difficult, but I think it's exciting to think about like what other things could exist there.
Yeah. So you mentioned Micah Carroll's work. He's done some work on like recommendation systems, and my understanding is that you've thought a little bit about that. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I'm really interested in the machine learning systems that underlie kind of like the big levers of society, things that drive social media or platforms like YouTube or TikTok, systems that really impact us at scale in kind of interesting and kind of hard to foresee ways. And it's easy to kind of quantify engagement or how you might rate something, and more difficult to get to the question of like, what's an experience that, years from now, I'll look back and really be grateful for. So kind of a project in that direction is working with Goodreads. I just really like books. So Goodreads has kind of a data set of like books and like text reviews and ratings. And what's really cool about it, I think just as a data set, is that it encompasses years of sometimes, books that a person has read. And that even though a book, a lot of books you read like don't really impact you that much, there are the potential for kind of transformative experiences in there where, reading a book could actually change the course of your life in some way. And that there are these text reviews that actually could detail, how a book has affected you. So you could look for phrases like, has this book changed my life? And the hope is that building on that data set, you could come up with a recommendation system that could be tailored to the history of what you've read, and maybe could contribute to your development, so to the change of your preferences, the change of your worldview. And I've done some initial work in that direction. It's like not easy to create such a system, but I think like for those kinds of data sets, it'd be really exciting to see people try to grapple with the challenges of changing preferences and deeper things that a person might want.
Yeah, I guess it's an interesting problem because, like, at least in the abstract, not all changes are good, right? Like I can imagine like somebody saying like, oh yeah, this book changed me, for good, and I read that, I'm like, no thanks. Yeah, I'm wondering if you have thoughts about how to kind of disentangle the good types of changes from the bad types.
Yeah, that's like a huge challenge. And in some initial work, if you just kind of stack rank books by the percentage of reviews that people say they changed their lives, you get things like Tony Robbins at the top and kind of self-help books, which maybe really do change a person's life, but also could be just like hacking your sense of this kind of excitement about a new idea that actually doesn't really change your life in a good way. So I think
it's tricky. Yeah. Or one thing that I think goes on there is like, if a book has changed your life, there's like a pretty good chance that it's like a self-help book. But if you read a self-help book, there's a good chance that it will not in fact change your life. So it's like both things are going on, I guess.
Yeah, I think they're really deep philosophical questions about how to know if a change is good or bad for you, and questions of paternalism that step in if the machine learning system's guiding you in a way that you wouldn't necessarily want but is changing you. And one way to try to, at least one first cut approximation of something that might be okay, is if it could project out possible futures for you. Like if you read this book, it might impact you in this way.
Right.
Or giving you the affordance to say like, I really would love to be able to someday appreciate Ulysses, that, it's a famously challenging book.
Right.
And what are the things I would need to do to be able to appreciate that? So trying to rely a little bit on human autonomy. But yeah, there's messy societal questions there, because you could imagine also, I don't think this is really going to happen in book recommendation, but as a microcosm, if everyone got kind of like hooked onto like Ayn Randsville, like that's maybe the easiest path to have like a life-changing experience or something. Like you read Ayn Rand, it's like, really changed my worldview or something. But the kind of, second order consequence is something that is, a lot of people are getting stuck in a philosophical kind of dead end or local optima or something. So I don't know. I think there's definitely challenging questions, but I think there's also probably principled ways to kind of navigate that space.
Yeah, I guess it's like, I feel like the thing you ideally would want to do is like have some sort of conversation with your future self, right? Where you could be like, oh yeah, this like seems like it is bad, but like I don't know, maybe you've got like some really good reason, or like, this seems good, but like let me just check, It's, I don't know. It seems pretty hard, but
yeah, no, I think it's great. Yeah, like I think there's also independent reasons it's nice to talk to your future self, and that I think there's some research that shows that actually can motivate you to kind of to change, to be the kind of person you want to be. There's also the weird kind of thing is it's the stepwise changes that you go through in your like worldview. You might, when you get to the end of it, approve of those changes, but at the beginning you look at those and be like, I didn't want to become that kind of person or something. Like as a kid, I wanted to be an astronaut.
Right.
And maybe, kid me talking to President me, like, wow, your life is kind of boring. You could have been on the moon or something. So I don't mean to like always bring up the philosophical annoyances, but it's like interesting that like it's hard to, I think in Micah's paper kind of talks a bit about this kind of difficulty with by whose preferences do you judge whether your future preferences are good or something.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I think it's challenging, and I think that's food for thought for our listeners. So thanks very much for chatting with me.
Thanks for having me. It's been great.
This episode was edited by Kate Brunotz, and Amber Dornace helped with transcription. The opening and closing themes are by Jack Garrett. Financial support for this episode was provided by the Long-Term Future Fund, along with patrons such as Alexei Malafeyev. To read a transcript of the episode, or to learn how to support the podcast yourself, you can visit axrp.net. Finally, if you have any feedback about this podcast, you can email me at feedback@axrp.net.